Well, hello there, and welcome to the show. It's a little bit lively already in the chat room here on the show today, and somehow it's Wednesday already. Glad to have you with us today. We've had a lot of Notre Dame College World Series talk here the past few days, but we have a big, beefy, bodacious Notre Dame football topic coming up for you today. So excited about that. Excited to jump into some Notre Dame football talk on today's show. We'll have some rapid fire talk later. Where we'll hit several different topics. Also, someone new on the show coming up here in just a few minutes. But Jim Nantz always likes to say the Masters is a tradition unlike any other. And I'm not really into golf, or I guess if I'm being completely honest, not into golf at all. But when it comes strictly to golf, I would have to agree with Mr. Nantz. The Masters, tradition unlike any other. But, with all due respect to Jim Nantz and Augusta and all that, if you're looking at the entirety of sports, there are no better traditions, I think, you'll find than in college sports. I've been lucky to be around two of the most tradition-rich programs in all of sports, I think, anyway. I'm an alum of the University of Kansas. Origins of the sport of basketball traced directly back to Lawrence, the street that runs right in front of Allen Fieldhouse, Naismith Drive, named after the inventor of the sport, James Naismith, who was the first head coach at Kansas. And of course, I've been around Notre Dame football for more than 2 decades. And I mean, I'm talking to a predominantly Notre Dame audience. And, I don't have to tell you about all the traditions of the program that date back to 1887, just a couple decades after the Civil War ended. I mean, you've got Newt Rockne, didn't invent the sport. He wasn't Notre Dame's first head coach, but of course, he was one of the first great coaches in the history of the sport. And, you got the Four Horsemen and just everything else that comes with Notre Dame football. So many different traditions. But there's also been a lot of change at Notre Dame, especially in recent years. Like you've got the Campus Crossroads project that drastically changed the look of Notre Dame Stadium, the Jumbotron, the video board, whatever you want to call it. Both, those things fairly controversial, I think. And so was the installation of artificial turf a few years back. The house that Rockne built looks nothing like it did in 1930. So, there's definitely been a fine line between keeping traditions in place and modernization in the ever-changing world of big-time college athletics. So with all that in mind, my question to you today is, what's a tweak you would make, a change you would want to see with Notre Dame football? I put out a Twitter poll today with a few suggestions, to get the conversation started, and we got a ton of responses, and we'll get to a lot of them, a lot of votes in the poll as well, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. We've already seen the biggest change made, that a football program can make, or really any program can make. Brian Kelly left, Marcus Freeman becomes the head coach. Kelly leaving was out of everyone's hands, but, let's be honest, there were a lot of people who wanted to see that change made, right? So, we saw a change, back to tradition recently. Freeman goes back. He brings back the pregame mass and the walk, that the team is going to make to the Basilica, or from the Basilica to the stadium. Another tweak recently when they changed the victory march. It's now sons and daughters, not just sons, while her loyal sons and daughters march on to victory. And what's a tweak now, if you had to say, what would be one that you'd like to make? One of the popular ones that I've, heard going around recently is add some player names to the back of the jerseys. And haven't seen any hard poll numbers on that one, but I have heard some people who support the idea. We'll hear from some of those from the Twitter poll, here in a little bit. With the world of NIL, it'd make sense. You put the names on the back of the jersey, someone buys the jersey, player gets a percentage, that kind of thing. Tradition that went away a few years ago was painting the helmets the night before the games, a lot of helmet talk, no, not a lot, but at least some helmet talk in that Twitter poll that we put out today. But they went to the laminate helmet, that has actual gold flakes in it. So, it looks a lot shinier on TV than the old helmets and all that kind of stuff. Some people don't like the new look, because it abandoned the tradition of painting the helmets. I've got one of the old helmets here in my house. It's really kind of ordinary looking. The shinier helmets, I think they do look a lot better. And, I think it matters to have a shiny gold helmet, that pops on TV today, in a world where so many other schools have an alternate uniform and a different helmet for every game for the most part. What about the uniforms, though? Anything else that you would change? Got a lot of feedback on the uniforms again in the Twitter poll. Personally, I would like to see them wear green at least once a year. Not a surprise game where they do it. Just pick a game before the season starts and say, this is going to be the green uniform game or the green jersey game, whatever. And again, I know some traditionalists don't like that. They hate the change and all that different kind of stuff. I think it would be fun to see a little more, of it mixed in than with just the Shamrock Series game, when they change the uniforms and stuff like that. So, give the home fans something different once in a while. I mean, if you're going to go out and roll out opponents like Central Michigan, UNLV, and Marshall, why not throw a Shamrock on the helmet every now and then? Or, other alternate uniforms, I guess. But here's the change I would like to most see Notre Dame make right now, though. And again, I know it's not going to be popular with everyone, but I did see some of this suggested on Twitter today as well. I think it's time for the Navy series to either come to an end or at least be altered to some degree. Some will agree. Again, traditionalists won't. But before you yell at me, I am a veteran, so I'm not anti-military by any means. That has nothing to do with it. And I know about why Notre Dame and Navy play, how Navy kept Notre Dame open during World War II and all that. The pledge that Notre Dame made to play Navy every year. But it's been like 80 years now at this point. The world's in a much different place today. Army and Navy were competing nationally, for championships, national championships, even into the 60s. I mean, the Air Force Academy wasn't even around till the 50s, So I know it's a big game for Navy. And in the last 50 years, it's become a much bigger game for them than Notre Dame. And it's also a big revenue game for them as well. And, that's why the games, when they play, it's supposed to be at Navy. It's played in an NFL stadium. Let's not forget, though, Army, Navy, Air Force, they're government-subsidized service academies. I mean, we talk about NIL right now and, players getting paid and all that. Well, every member of a service academy gets a monthly paycheck, so it's – I just kind of cringe at the notion that a service academy that's funded by taxpayer dollars has to rely on a Notre Dame football game to keep the lights on every year. So that's a change that I would make. I would at least like to see that Notre Dame Navy series altered, so, and some of you feel like it as well. And there's a lot that comes with playing Navy, the cut blocks and, all that different stuff, the time of year they play it, everything else. But that's at the top of my list. So we're going to keep talking about this. We got a lot of responses on Twitter today and a lot, going on in our YouTube chat room right now as we do this live. But before we get to those, I have to bring in the man you'll be seeing and hearing regularly, mostly Wednesdays with me here on the show. He has got the same last name as me. So, that's a good sign, I think. The one, the only, Jesse Steyers. How are you today?
Everyone. I'm doing well. It's been kind of a groggy Wednesday. I was happy to be done with work and come do some of the fun stuff and talk about Notre Dame sports here with you today.
That's right, and we are about to get it on, and I don't, we've got like I said, there's a lot going on in our live chat right now. We got a lot of Twitter feedback on this today, so this is going to be a topic we can kind of go for a while on. So let's start with your answer on this. What would be at the top of your list, Jesse, of what, the tweak that you would make for Notre Dame football? Again, a lot of responses to the Twitter poll. I asked, what's the tweak that you would want to see Notre Dame football make? What's the tweak that you would like to make?
I have a tweak that I think about all the time, but I don't know necessarily how it could be changed. And I've talked to you about this before. You see these SEC environment home games And you see the craziness and the rowdiness and the fans going crazy. And I would like to see more of that at Notre Dame. I would like to see more fans engaged. But I think that's a little bit hard considering who the season tickets are being sold to and how many season tickets are, who's general admission tickets compared to season tickets. I think it's hard to really control that aspect of things. But so for that reason, I would have to say that the schedule is the main thing that I would change. And that dates back to, when I was growing up, I went to a lot of games because of you, actually. And the games that I was going to, you got to see Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, USC on a year-in, year-out basis. And it just seems now that Notre Dame decides that they want to play a schedule that isn't as entertaining. And when you have season tickets or you want to go to these home games, the games that matter. So like this year, you'd be USC and Clemson, obviously. Those are going to drive the price way up. And if you wanted to go to a game like Marshall, UNLV, those games aren't as popular yet. Those are going to be the tickets that are more affordable. So in my opinion, I'd like to get rid of or flush out some of the opponents like Marshall, UNLV, and I'd like to go back to playing some major Power 5 conferences on a regular basis, and not only for a fan aspect, but because I think this really could prepare the Notre Dame team for later on in the season, once they get towards the end, once they have bowl games and that kind of situation, instead of, I think a lot of talk recently has been about, Notre Dame can pile up the wins against the teams that they're supposed to beat. So I'd like to see them challenge themselves more and go back to playing some of these more Power 5 teams that are competitively good every year.
So I agree to an extent with a lot of what you're saying, like the atmosphere and some of the comments that we got, that'll be in some of the things that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Again, so here's the Twitter poll that I put out today. What's a tweak you would want to see Notre Dame football make? The options I gave: uniform change, go back to grass surface, schedule, or other. And the uniform change, is the one that got it basically won the Twitter poll with over 40% of the vote. And then the schedule and the grass surface were each in the 20s, and then other, you had to explain what other was. That was pretty low. But uniform change at the top. I asked people to specify. Again, number 2, go back to grass surface. Number 3, the schedule, and then number 4 was other. So one of the things, well, let me ask you this, because you started off talking about the schedule. I was saying, I think that you need to either get rid of Navy or at least alter what you're doing with Navy. Getting rid of them might be too much, but it kind of plays into what you're talking about right there with, like, go back to more Power 5 schools, because we're seeing a lot more, Marshall, UNLV, they're playing basically a different MAC school every year. Now part of it is with the understanding, okay, you're going to play USC, you're going to play Stanford, you're going to play your 5 ACC schools, so that's 7 right there. And then what they're trying to do is add, sort of like a premier Power 5, like your Ohio State coming up this year. There's going to be Alabama in future years, the Wisconsin thing that they did, so they're sort of adding a big Power 5 school onto that as well to kind of try to bolster and the schedule and offset the fact that they don't play in a conference championship game. So I think that there's a balance between, it seems like they're trying to sort of say, okay, just like this year, for example, it's going to come down to 2 or 3 different games. We should be okay in the rest as long as we take care of business. And if we win, 2 out of these 3 games, we're at least going to be, in college football playoff contention. You win all 3, you're going to be in the college football playoff. So, there's definitely a balance that they're trying to strike there. But as to the Navy, what do you think about either discontinuing or, maybe say, you're rotating Navy on and off, like every 4 to 5 years or something like that?
I like the tradition of Navy. I don't think you could entirely get rid of it. I like the aspect in which Navy brings against the Notre Dame team. It really tests the physicality of Notre Dame's defense. I think at times, you want to see some smash mouth football, in my opinion, where they're running that triple option. You have to be assignment sound in the run game. You have to be able to fill your gaps. I like when the safeties are coming downhill to make plays in the box, those kind of situations. So I don't necessarily think getting rid of Navy is the option, but I do like the idea of maybe play Navy 1 year, take a year off, play Navy again another year, take a
Yeah.
year off, go that route. But getting rid of Navy altogether, I'm not a fan of. I like the tradition of playing Navy, and like I said, I like what Notre Dame has to what they have to bring to that game. It's a different type of mentality. You know, you're getting punched in the mouth every single play. You know they're going to go for it on fourth down. It teaches discipline. It teaches filling the gaps, and it teaches assignment sound football.
I like this right here from whoever A100 is. The change of head coach was enough for me. These players will go through brick walls. Go Irish. So he's like, again, it's like he's seen the biggest change that he needs to make. And I think it's like that for everyone. It's like you get that change. You go from Brian Kelly to Marcus Freeman. Now we're just nitpicking. We're trying to have our cake and eat it too by, figuring out whatever other changes they might make. But, again, I think a lot of people were happy, when they saw that change made. And even if they weren't, I think they're even happier right now, just the way recruiting has gone under Marcus Freeman since Brian Kelly left. All right. So let me see. Let's go through a few more. Again, the uniform thing was at the top of the poll. So one of the suggestions, let me put it this way. A lot of the negative feedback on the uniforms is the mustard colored pants. What do you think of the color of the pants that they wear with the uniforms, Jess?
I agree with the statement that yes, mustard color pants aren't ideal. But I think another thing that people need to keep in mind here is these these big hogs, especially the offensive linemen, when they get sweaty and it's a hot game, those pants are going to become kind of diluted no matter what.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd like to see some more brightness to them, yes, but the more you start sweating, it's just going to add a darker tint to it. So, I like the pants. I don't necessarily see it as an issue. I don't watch games and say, hey, I wish they'd be wearing, not these mustard pants. I see why people, have an issue with it, but I wouldn't mind maybe wearing more of an alternate pant. When it comes to uniforms, I'm a big big fan of the green. I'd like to see them go with a green uniform once a season. I'd like to see them accent with some of their green. One of my favorite jerseys that they ever wore was the Shamrock Series that was played down in Cowboy Stadium against Arizona State. The white uniforms with the green and gold accent. I like those kind of uniforms. I see a comment in the chat that says, maybe add a stripe. I definitely agree. I think you should do more than saying monochromatic with the blue tops and the mustard bottoms, and use more of the green to accent things. Maybe wear a blue jersey with white numbers and a green trim around it. I just think that looks a lot more sharper. I think you could add a green shamrock to the side of the shoulder pads on a permanent uniform set. So I just think some subtle changes with using more of their color palette would improve things. But the mustard pants themselves aren't the biggest concern, I guess, to me at least.
I would agree with that. But there is a better looking pant. I don't know if you saw in the Twitter feed, on that tweet, Brian Driscoll posted a picture. I think it was Alohi Gilman from a few years back when they wore they're the uniforms that were the throwback to the 1988 national championship team. They had kind of a light colored gold pant. They had just basically the traditional navy blue jersey, white numbers, some gold trim, and then they had the interlocking NDs on the side. Now, because they're Under Armour, they weren't exactly, they were wearing Champion back then and all that different kind of stuff. But the pant itself and the helmet, I thought was perfect. It's like the perfect color of gold. The helmet, is the current helmet. I think it is good. I would like to see, kind of like I said before, some different variations, because we see in the Shamrock Series they do some stuff. We did have one suggestion from someone to make basically the Shamrock Series uniform they wore last year in Chicago, the regular uniform. It does have stripes down the side, like the white with blue on the outsides, and then the stripes on the shoulders and stuff like that as well. Again, one comment about the mustard, a lot of people commenting about the mustard gold pants. Someone said mustard is for hot dogs. Keep it off the pants. The pants should match the beautiful gold helmets. I can't say I disagree with that. Yeah, but I mean, really, and I agree. Like on the white uniforms that you're talking about, I think you might have a hard time. Like if you were going to use those as your regular road uniforms, and someone tweeted that as well, a picture of those Shamrock Series from 2013 when they did go down there to Texas to play Arizona State. They're all white, green numbers, and then the gold trim, and they had the Shamrocks on the helmets as well. I think that an easy fix for the road uniforms, the white jerseys, would just be, and I saw someone suggest this as well, make the letters on the white jerseys green, put some gold trim around it, and I think that that's enough of a tweak right there, and it's going to look pretty sharp. I think that would be a really good look. You could wear them with a lot of different stuff if you did that. Just make the numbers green.
Yeah, and like that's the thing I was trying to hit on the most is I'm not necessarily fond of big overhauls or big changes. I would just like to see more things accented with some more of their colors, like the green and gold.
Yeah, a lot of people going after Under Armour, not happy with the Under Armour. Nike.
I saw those comments.
Yeah, Nike would be the best option for Notre Dame. One person says definitely not Jumpman. Another person just says switch to Nike. What do you think about Under Armour versus Nike versus Adidas? Like if in a perfect world, if you had your choice, because you're a shoe guy, you're a shoe aficionado, especially. So what would be your shoe company uniform provider of choice if you had your choice?
It's very easy. What I would pick, I own a lot of these shoes and sweatshirts and sweatpants and stuff. It would be no doubt Nike. But unfortunately, that's not that's not a decision that football kind of makes on their own. That's a school wide thing, and that gets passed down to the different sporting teams. But I would definitely go with Nike, and I would say beyond personal preference, I think the main thing you would want to look at too is recruits love Nike.
Yeah.
I could almost tell you, I would confidently say 80 to 85%, and maybe even more, recruits love Nike. And you wonder why Michigan went to Jumpman. It's because recruits love Jumpman more than they love Nike. And so at the end of the day, someone being my age, I'm 26. Recruits are obviously just a few years younger than me. We all love Nike. Nike's the best thing. It looks the slickest. It's the most renowned. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Under Armour. I like the way their stuff is, but it's a little simplistic at times. I really think that Nike is the best brand. It looks the best brand. And like I said, most importantly, recruits love the Nike brand. They love to wear it. They love everything about it. They love the diversity about it, the different combinations that Nike comes up with. And especially when it comes to footwear. I know we're talking about football right now, but Nike makes the best cleats. Nike makes the best basketball shoes. Nike makes, just all around the best products. And I think that recruits really look at that thing. Is it the major deciding factor? No, but is it something that they look at? I wouldn't say no. I think it's something that factors into, whatever degree it is, it still has some sort of factor.
I'm curious why the anti-Nike sentiment that I'm seeing in the chat right now. Now, again, there are some people on the Twitter who suggested the Nike. Jesse's saying the Nike. Again, I agree with what you're saying because of the fact that the younger kids, the kids who are actually being recruited, they like Nike a heck of a lot more than they like everything else.
Man, we are getting some major Nike slander right now.
I know. Personally,
there's not one person that says Nike. Yes.
I like Adidas gear, or not Adidas gear. I like the Under Armour gear, the shirts and all the, tech and all that stuff. Under Armour shoes, they are not comfortable, and there have been even cases where you talk to people and it's like their feet were literally bleeding trying to wear Under Armour shoes, wearing them to actually play sports or work out or whatever else. Under Armour has a long way to go with the shoes. I like some of the other stuff. I'm not crazy about the color green that they use for the uniforms that Under Armour uses right now. I definitely don't like the blue numbers on the green. Again, another suggestion we saw on Twitter, the picture was basically like the Joe Montana throwback green uniforms. Now those are mustard colored pants, but they're like the Kelly green, with the yellow number and all that kind of stuff on there. I do think it's a pretty cool look, but those are mostly going to be kind of a one-off thing at this point, like a throwback, like they did a few years back when Notre Dame played USC. And I think it might be hard to get them, back out of the closet right now because of how that game turned out when Notre Dame played USC. That was back in the Zipikowski days. But bigger numbers on the uniforms is what someone said. They said the numbers are way too small. I'm not sure about that one because, I don't have as good of eyes as I had 15 years ago, but I don't have a problem seeing the numbers. So it doesn't seem like a problem, like unless you're Mr. Magoo. So like, I don't know about bigger numbers. Like, have you ever looked at a game or, whatever, Jess, and went, man, I wish they had bigger numbers?
No, I can't say that I've been watching a game and be like, I need these numbers to be a little bit bigger because I can't see who is who. I think they're fine. And yeah, I really have no problem. And like I said, I've never thought of like, oh, these numbers are really crappy to see right now.
A lot of people would like to see at least a green jersey game every year. And I don't disagree with that. And again, maybe I don't know if the resistance is, like they're, because of the way it's been done at times before, like they're, kind of trying to surprise people with the greens or whatever. Like I said, just pick a game before the season starts and say, this is the green jersey game. And again, when you've got the Marshalls and UNLVs and those kind of schools on the schedule, just say one of those is going to be the green game. And maybe it gets fans a little bit more excited for that specific game because now it's like, okay, this is going to be the green jersey game, even though it's UNLV. So, that'll be kind of memorable, kind of cool to go to, that kind of thing. Let's talk about the schedule a little bit because, it's obviously something that actually impacts results as opposed, we talked a little bit about the Navy and stuff like that. One person says, stop giving away home games, i.e. the Shamrock Series stays at home. Do you like the fact that they take the Shamrock Series on the road every year, Jess?
I am a big fan of the Shamrock Series. I think I'm saying a lot of things that might be contrary to some popular opinions, but I like the Shamrock Series. I like that they go to these big venues. You go to venues that are, not kind of across the country. And the main thing, as everyone knows, with the Shamrock Series is, one, you're trying to draw in recruits predominantly. You're going to areas that you don't usually play in. And I think another big thing is Notre Dame has such a national fan base is that you want to go to areas where, there tends to be people that might not be able to make Notre Dame games in person, because they either play all the way in South Bend or, there's not a away game that's close by. And so I like the fact that they go to these big venues and they're going to play in the new renowned Vegas stadium. That's great for the players. It's a great recruiting tool saying, hey, you're going to play in an NFL stadium and maybe 2 or 3 by the time you graduate, from the University of Notre Dame. I think it's a great lucrative tool in order to draw in recruits. And that's the biggest thing that in order to be a good football team, you got to have good recruits. And I think that's what, that's the main reason, or, the reasoning behind Brian Kelly's departure is that he couldn't get the level of recruits that he wanted. Okay, that's fine. Whatever that excuse might be.
That's what yeah, exactly.
But, we've seen Marcus Freeman kind of say, hold my beer on that one, buddy, because I have the #1 recruiting class and it's only been a few months. But, I digress on that. But the whole reason for the Shamrock Series is that you want to go to places, you want it to be, a popular event. You want the Notre Dame name and brand to get out across the nation even more. And the most important part to hit home on is you want these recruits to get excited about their time to come play at Notre Dame. It's just another thing that they get to do compared to, the Alabamas, the, Georgias, the other, big schools. They're not playing. I don't see Alabama on playing in, the Las Vegas stadium this season.
I'll just say this, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, like the rationale, you get into an NFL stadium, that's a big deal. And it also, this is the one where they're obviously, we talked a lot about uniforms. This is where they bust out the alternate uniform. So it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. They get in an NFL stadium, they get to wear the alternate uniforms, they can use it as recruiting, all that. Okay. here's the problem, and I see kind of some other things going on. Again, because we've talked about Marshall, UNLV, Central Michigan. I don't want to keep beating them up, but it's like, and I see people saying, look, I pay a lot of money for season tickets for these home games. And unfortunately, the home part of the schedule is getting watered down, and you're taking a good game and you're playing it someplace else. And now you've got to travel halfway across the country if you want to go there. So I'm a little torn on it. I see its merits, but at the same time, I would like to see a better home schedule put together, and there's like kind of along those lines. There are people who want to see Michigan back on the schedule more regularly, Michigan State, Penn State, those kind of things. They want to get rid of Stanford, move the USC game to the last game of the year, regardless of if it's in LA or here in South Bend. The biggest problem with that is, and other people have said move both of the California games, when they're here to the back end. Two different problems with that. One, you've got those schools in a conference, so that there would have to be some moving things around and stuff like that. They're both able to accomplish it every other year, but bigger than that probably for both of those schools is, I doubt they really want to come to South Bend in November. They've had this agreement in place for several years now, and it's worked out good for them. It's worked out for the most part for Notre Dame to just say, okay, when it's the Notre Dame home game, you play it in October when the weather is still relatively decent. When it's the California home game, you play it at the end of November. Now, the other side of that is that part of the calendar is where the weather gets, worse in California as well. That's kind of the rainy season out there into November. But, I think a lot of people would like to see that. Would you like to see the Michigan State, Penn State back on the schedule consistently yourself?
I would. I really thought that those kind of turned into, well, not turned into, everyone knows Michigan is a rival. And Michigan State kind of turned into a rivalry too, because those were just very good, solid games. It seemed like year in and year out, Michigan State's always a consistently good team. Notre Dame's always a consistently good team. I'm all for playing opponents that are going to, strengthen the team and get you prepared for the end of the season. I'm okay with playing some of the Marshalls and the UNLVs early in the season, kind of tune-up games. You see it often in the SEC. They do that early on in the season. But I'm okay with playing those kind of teams as long as it's limited. I think one or two of those type of games early in the season are good. And then I want to see the schedule progressively get Notre Dame prepared for the end of the season, when they're truly in contention to potentially go to a New Year's Six Bowl, a national playoff, a bowl game in general. I just want them to be more prepared, because it seems like, yes, Notre Dame has these good regular season records, but look at some of their opponents in the past, and it's, teams, like I said, that they should be beating, and then they get to these big games at the end of the season, and we all know, they have a horrible record in New Year's Six Bowls. They have a horrible record in the playoffs. So what can you do to be better prepared for those moments? And that's playing more solid teams from Power 5 conferences. And it's not just limited to, the Penn States, the Michigan States, the Michigans. Yes, it'd be nice to have them, back on the schedule, but I'd like to, maybe add an SEC team in there for fun, every now and then to really see. It doesn't even have to be the Alabamas or the Georgias like we've seen in the past. Maybe play like a Mississippi State, an Ole Miss, an Arkansas, a team like that, just to bring more of, a stronger schedule for Notre Dame. I really think helps them on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, flip side of that is, because there was a time before the ACC agreement and all these different things where they were playing tougher schedules and they didn't have the same record. Now you can argue about, whether or not recruiting was the same and all that different kind of stuff. But, like look at Ohio State, for example. They're going to play about the same amount of games against higher end competition every year as Notre Dame is going to play. As much as a lot of people want to trump the Big Ten and all that different kind of stuff, you've got a handful of teams who are actually good, and then you've got a lot of average to below average competition as well. So while Ohio State is in a conference, their schedule really is not much different. And if you look year in and year out, the strength of schedule Notre Dame has is right on par, if in some cases even better than what they're playing. So I get what you're saying, because it definitely, you're going up against better competition, and the games are, quote unquote, more marquee, but they've kind of found a formula right now that at least allows them to be in college football playoff contention. And the other side of that is, until the playoff, till they come to an agreement on expansion, which is supposed to happen by about this time next year, until they come to some kind of agreement on that, it's definite. Like keeping the schedule the way it is right now benefits Notre Dame. Not taking too many chances and having two or three pretty good opponents on the schedule year in and year out, because you're trying to make a playoff field of four. So if you make the schedule tougher, then you're taking unnecessary chances basically on whether or not you're going to get in. But if they expand the playoff, then that can change things a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with your side too. It's just tough seeing them, in the last couple of seasons, is playing some of these MAC schools like Toledo and Ball State. And as a fan, these are home games, and these come down to being kind of close games, and it makes you feel uneasy about what's going on, and what's really happening with the team this season. So, and it doesn't look good nationally too. So, you always hear the saying, whether you want to or not, teams inevitably play down to their competition. I really feel, as much as you want to, say it doesn't happen, it does happen. Notre Dame knows, these players know who they're playing, and inevitably they know that, they don't ultimately have to flip the switch sometimes until like the fourth quarter rolls around. And so, like, to me, it almost feels like a waste of a game, because you didn't get better that game. Yes, you won the game, but you didn't get better. So I think the overall goal for me would be, I'd like to see them play teams that are going to advance their skill at every game. I want to see them get better every game. And when you're barely holding on to these Ball State Toledo games, I don't necessarily think you're getting better, because you're just flipping the switch when it's time to really put it into gear.
Yep. There's a comment from Michael up on the screen right now. Nobody plays the Holtz era type schedules anymore, and that is very true. So a couple of other comments here on a couple other things, like atmosphere at the stadium was a big thing. And one person said, find a way to limit the number of tickets opposing fans can buy on the open market, like a 75% fee on sales of season tickets to opposing fans. Cincinnati was bad last year, and it's demoralizing when visiting fans get louder than the home fans. And, that has become an issue. And again, when you couple it with the fact that cost versus, overall season tickets, what it costs for season tickets, and the kind of schedule that you're getting, I think that all plays into it as well. And people have, there were some other comments about the atmosphere, and, like other schools find a way that, like, everyone's wearing the same colored t-shirt, whether it's white or yellow or, green, whatever it happens to be. All these other schools, are finding a way, to kind of help their atmosphere in that way. But, at Notre Dame, unless you specifically say, okay, it's a green game, everybody wear green, then everyone's just got something different colored on all the time. Would you like to see more of that kind of stuff at Notre Dame Stadium?
Yeah, I remember, when I was going to games growing up, it seemed like there were a couple games at least once a year, maybe two, where they were passing out little rally towels, and people would be swinging those around in the stadium, and it's a good look. I think it's, everyone's got the same thing. It's during big series or downs, or whatever the situation might be, when you have everyone going crazy in uniform, that's really what it comes down to, is you want the people to be doing everything uniformly. You want to look like a uniform mass, cheering on your team in a very loud and supportive way, because it brings that home field advantage that I think Notre Dame lacks sometimes. I think, like you were talking about, the comment about Cincinnati, in their most important game of the season, Cincinnati took over their home stadium in a game in which they started, they struggled early, and it's hard to come back from those things when you're not playing well and you don't even have your home crowd there to give you that slight edge anymore. So, yeah.
Georgia a few years back as well. Same thing.
Right. And so I think that you can do things, You can hand out a $2 shirt to every person that comes in. You can hand out a 50-cent towel, to everyone that comes in. I think those are the things that you can get more of, like I said, uniform kind of look to you. And I think that it does play some sort of an importance. You want the stadium to be intimidating. You don't want it to feel, like it's just another game, and that there's no home field advantage essentially.
Yeah. Colin said it should just be an unspoken rule that you wear green to an Irish game. And, I think that would make a lot of sense. But, one of the issues is you've also got the shirt that comes out every year, and the students always wear the shirt. And so if it's not green, then you've got that section of the stadium. A former player and I have had the conversation quite a bit that, the shirt should always be green, some form of green, and, get more green in the stadium. And he'd like to see green on the uniforms as well. Here's another one, because we were just talking about the schedule and all that stuff. Michael says, increasing the strength of schedule before you upgrade your overall talent would be counterproductive. We know why our postseason record is what it is. Key position talent gap, not our opponents. I mean, I think that's a really good point as well. You've got to continue the recruiting and get them to where, okay, now you've got, more 4s and 5s out there before you start jacking up your level of competition, the way that some people were talking about. Here's another one. Anthony, love the idea of SC coming to South Bend in November. I think a lot of people would like to see that. But again, they have a say in that as well. So that might be a little bit harder making that happen, I think. But again, hostile environment, getting people in the same color, all that different kind of stuff. Those are some other comments that we got on this. Here is one final thought, like outside of on-field playing. Controversial opinion, this guy wrote on Twitter. Here come the Irish intro, and shipping up to Boston is kind of lame. Would love to see Notre Dame do something bigger and more intense as the Irish run out of the tunnel. Especially, I'm fond of Dropkick Murphys and all that. So I like shipping up to Boston for one. Here come the Irish. I know a lot of people who are definitely a nay on the Here Come the Irish, the Irish singer and all that stuff. Here Come the Irish of Notre Dame. I'm not even going to try to hit that note because there's no way that I can. What do you think of that? Is there anything else that you'd like to see them, come out of the tunnel to? Any of those kind of things, Jess?
I like their tradition of what they come out of the tunnel to. Every time I hear the Here Come the Irish when I'm in attendance and you hear the dun afterwards, I get goosebumps. I think that is one of the things where I know I'm at a Notre Dame game and I know, that it's about to go down. This is, it's almost like the war cry almost. And then, the players come out and everything. But what I would like, and, I know not a lot of people like this and, you can't control the time in which you play. I liked, when they dubbed up all of the lights last year and did the light show in the evening time. I think some of that stuff to get the crowd more interactive. We talked about, them not having a home presence. Okay, so what can you do to get the entire stadium's attention, to get everyone, in that atmosphere of let's be hyped up together? And whether or not you liked the song choice or what they did with the lights, that blew up on Twitter, and the entire stadium was locked in at that point and ready to go. It uniformly brought everyone together, whether or not you liked it or not, and it provided that atmosphere that I think gave Notre Dame the edge in that moment. It provided an atmosphere to the other team like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. This is going into the fourth quarter, and they do. You see this, and as an opposing team, one, you have to be in awe first of all, because the jealousy aspect of it, like that, it looked cool. Like you can't tell me that none of those players on their team were like, man, this is. I didn't wish that. I wish we didn't do this in our own home stadium.
Well, yeah, like a couple of the night games last year that between the third and fourth quarter, and they've got the green lights flashing and all those different things, and you've got the what was it? Let me clear my throat, and all that kind of stuff. It's like you could. I think it might have been North Carolina. Like you could see them. They were out there on the field and they're like looking at the lights. It looked like. So Yeah, it's definitely there's a lot of cool things they can do, and I will give them that this past year they were interjecting more of that. I don't know if we need you know the hosts in the stands and trivia quizzes and stuff like that during
No.
timeouts, but that was lower on my list, I think. But again, it's one of those trends that's going around. You see a lot more of it right now at different sporting events around the country. I think they're going to keep kind of experimenting with it and tweaking it and see kind of where they go with it. I definitely, I do like some of the things they've done, but there are other things it's like, okay, hard pass. Let's move on and find the next thing right now.
Yeah, like it ultimately it boils down to let's get rid of the kind of cornier things and maybe head in the direction of, like I said, things that are going to engage the fans on a level that is just bringing overall excitement, getting
Yeah.
everyone on the same page.
And there are some traditionalists, maybe a lot of traditionalists, who don't like the fact that they're playing more of the current music and there's less marching band going on because the college atmosphere and all that. But it's like the marching band still gets to play; they do their thing. So there's a place for the marching band, but I just feel like it's 2022, and again, when you're talking about playing to a certain demographic, and that is 17 to 21, 22-year-olds, I think you've got to kind of keep up with the times. And the times are, more modern music and stuff like that, and things that are also going to, kind of get the crowd hype, because you hear, all about the down in front crowd at Notre Dame Stadium and all that. And that's something that needs to go away as well. There needs to be fewer ushers tapping people on the shoulder, telling them to sit down and all that, and letting people actually get excited about being in a Notre Dame football game and bringing a different kind of environment into the stadium. It's all part of what's necessary to run a winning program in the 21st century. So, all right, we've got time for some rapid fire. We're going to hit a few more topics before we wrap up. And again, appreciate all the feedback on this topic, and we're going to get to more of this on tomorrow's show as well, because there was so much. There's just no way we could hit all of it today, but Bobby will be with me tomorrow, and so we'll kind of get into some more of this on tomorrow's show as well, along with some other topics as well. Let's fill in the blank on this first rapid fire question. Notre Dame baseball ending its 20-year College World Series absence in Link Jarrett's third season was blank.
It was electrifying. It's been, like you said, 20 years since Notre Dame made the College World Series. I know, that especially the crowd we might be speaking to, I know baseball isn't on everyone's, radar compared to football and stuff like that. But it was electrifying to see a Notre Dame team like this go far. And I think, Notre Dame, as fans, we have so much to be proud of. First of all, them making the College World Series and beating a very good Texas team to start. And more importantly, what they did in that super regional is one of the more remarkable things you could argue that was done in the last 10 years of college baseball. Notre Dame went into Tennessee and beat a team that had only lost 3 times at home, and they played 70% of their schedule at home. They played in the hardest environment in baseball. They played against the best hitting team in baseball. They played against the best pitching team in baseball, and they took 2 of 3. They won 2 games at Tennessee when Tennessee had only lost 3 games, the entire season at home. They played their most sound baseball, and I think if they could have played that way against some of these teams recently, the Oklahoma and Texas A&M, things might have been a little bit better. But unfortunately, they just ran into some of the better pitching performances of the College World Series. You're going against guys who kind of struggled early on, but really found it in the right time for their respective teams. But in the end, I think it's electrifying what Notre Dame did this season, especially after how things ended last season against Mississippi State.
Yeah, it was. Getting to the College World Series this year, just 4 years ago, really 3 years ago, when they made the move on from Mick Aoki, this was a dormant program. This was a program without a pulse. It was like, you remember on Lost, what was that? One of the first couple of seasons of Lost, when they thought Charlie died because the smoke monster got to Charlie, and they're trying to bring him, like do the CPR and all that different stuff. And, like he's laying there and you're thinking he's going to die. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the breath, the air comes back and Charlie's back to life. That's what this program has become these last 3 years under Link Jarrett. And to get to the College World Series, it is hard, man. And this is a program that couldn't even get to the NCAA tournament 4, 5, 6 years ago. They had gone to one NCAA tournament from between 2007 and 2000 and basically 2019, 2020. 20 obviously got canceled by the pandemic, but they went to one NCAA tournament, let alone winning 2 regionals, going to 2 super regionals, and then going to the College World Series. This is the ultimate stage in college baseball. And for Link Jarrett to basically use a roster that was predominantly from the other coach, it's been talked about ad nauseum. You've got 1 junior, a handful of actual seniors, and then all these grad guys who were from, recruited by the previous coach. Now they've added some transfers and grad transfers and all that kind of stuff. But it is just amazing that in year 3, Link Jarrett was able to get these guys back to the College World Series. Because I'll be honest, it was not long ago. It was again, it would have been enough just to be sniffing NCAA tournament bids, let alone to be in the College World Series in year 3 under Link Jarrett. All right. Now, speaking of the College World Series, you and I were out there together in Omaha. You were taking photos for us out there down on the field. And while we were there, though, you met Auburn Athletic Director Allen Greene. Now, I want you to tell the story of that meeting. I'm going to kind of set it up real quickly first. So, last Friday, after Notre Dame won its College World Series opener against Texas, you and I were with our boy Pete LaFleur, former Notre Dame baseball SID. He was the SID when they went to the College World Series in 2002 and before that and after that as well. So after Notre Dame beats Texas, we text Javi Sanchez.
Sorry, could you say that again?
My Siri is going off right now. Siri, leave me alone. So we text Javi Sanchez. He was the shortstop on the 0-2 College World Series team. And we're like, okay, so where's the party? And Javi says the Hilton. And we're like, the Hilton? What's at the Hilton? Well, it turns out, we go to the Hilton, and it turns out that was the team hotel. So we walk in, and the entire lobby area is just swarming with Notre Dame people, because, again, they had just beaten Texas. There's a bar in the middle of it all, so there's just all kinds of activity going on. You've got, Paul Maneri in one corner holding court. He's got Brian O'Connor, his former pitching coach, is the head coach at Virginia. Over here, you've got a lot of former players. You've got current players, family members, staff, all these different people, hundreds of people in the lobby of this Hilton down there. So there are, and there's also some ESPN personalities because they were staying there as well. But among all these people, among the former players is Allen Greene, who is now the athletic director at Auburn. So I was not near you when this happened. Pete LaFleur introduces you to Allen Greene, and I'll let you take it from there. What came next?
Yeah, so Pete introduced me to Allen Greene, said, this is Allen Greene. He played, outfield for Notre Dame in the late 90s. And, of course, Pete goes into some random stat that only Pete would know. And Allen Greene was against Georgetown. I think he hit a home run from both sides of the plate. And that was one of the first times I think a Notre Dame player had ever done that. And that's kind of what Pete was talking about. So things kind of started up a little bit. And then, we kind of started talking a little bit. I had no idea that this guy was the athletic director of the University of Auburn, because first of all, he's a very young looking guy. And I'm not saying that athletic directors aren't young, but I think the more standard typical profile you'll see is maybe, some older people. He was very young. He was very fit. He looked like he could go out there and run like a 4.5, 4.6 40 if he really had to line up and go do it right away. So that kind of first caught me off guard. And, Pete says, hey, this is the Auburn athletic director. And, by the time, like you said, there was a bar and had a couple drinks. And I was like, really, you are the Auburn athletic director? And he goes, yeah. And so then I said, we started going into conversation. And I said, so really, you're the Auburn athletic director? And he goes, yeah, I'm the Auburn athletic director. And I said, if things lined up a certain way, Auburn could be playing Notre Dame, for the championship. And what it came from that, and I said, who would your rooting interest be for if you're a Notre Dame alum, and then you're going to Auburn's obviously the team that you're the athletic director for. And he said, no doubt it would be Auburn. And I said, even though that Notre Dame is your alma mater, it's really Auburn. He goes, yeah, it would be Auburn. And so I asked him for a third time. I said, hey, are you sure that it would be you would be cheering for Auburn? He goes, unfortunately, Auburn cuts my checks. And so at the end of the day, I can't be rooting against who cuts my checks. So it was a very, very abrupt introduction to Allen Greene, this guy who's the athletic director for the University of Auburn. But it was a very cool experience to meet a guy like that. And honestly, I was just in awe. I guess the main thing about all of it, I was just in awe about the fact that I was in presence of an athletic director of a big time SEC school. Auburn has done well in football, Auburn has done well in basketball, and now they're making a College World Series appearance. So I mean, obviously, Mr. Greene is doing a good job down there. So it was just overall, like I said, it was fun meeting him. I was in awe. And I have to say, the guy gave me 3 to 4 very firm handshakes. So down the road, maybe if it's time for me to enter some of the athletic realm, I can reach out to my good friend Allen Greene.
I guess so. Can you still hear me okay, Jess?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, because we're having I don't know where the internet issues are coming from. This it's kicked me out of here a couple of times. So hopefully, everything is still okay. It sounds like we're still going here, but our live stream has kind of booted me a couple of times, and things were sounding a little bit garbled on my end. So hopefully, we're able to kind of keep it going. It's an awesome story. I didn't get to hear all of it. I heard most of it the other night anyway. So I'm glad that our listeners have. We've come to about an hour at this point, and we are starting to develop some technical difficulties. So rather than chance, having some major issues for the rest of the broadcast, I think we will go ahead and wrap it up right here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good. I'm glad that this was a fun first day or first time on the new show, and I really enjoyed the topics we talked about. And it's really fun seeing the interactiveness of the live chat and seeing everyone's different opinions. And at the end of the day, that's what's fun. We all get to talk about what our differing opinions would be, and ultimately we all share the same interests of how much we love Notre Dame and the football team, and we just would like to see a couple things here and there that would maybe take it to the next level for us.
With that, thanks to for everyone for being with us today, and of course we will be back tomorrow. We're on Monday through Thursday, and we will wrap it up with tomorrow's show right here on IB Nation Sports Talk.